Hey everyone, so today I'd like to talk about a new plugin, relatively new. So this is by WA Production. It is a so-called Chords plugin. You know those chord plugins out there? Well, this is now also one of them. Very surprisingly, it is called Chords. So let's take a look at it. Now the first thing you might notice is that the interface is kind of unusually shaped. So they've chosen a circle to kind of visualize what is going on. That circle represents a loop. You can also see four different parts, four different areas in that circle. Now those parts, each of them represents a certain chord. And then you can also see this little arrow triangle over here, and this indicates where we are in the loop. So whenever I press play, that arrow will start going around the circle, and whenever it comes across one of those areas, it will kind of play the corresponding chord. So let me just press play and you'll see what I mean. Now, by the way, the sounds you're hearing aren't coming from Chords because Chords itself doesn't come with any sounds, but I've connected it to another plugin. In this case, that is Addictive Keys by XLN Audio. Anyway, moving on. So, as I mentioned, there are four different areas, so four different chords, but of course we can change that. The way to do that is to use these plus and minus symbols. Of course, if you press plus, then you will add a chord. If you press minus, you will remove a chord, and we can have up to 8 chords. Okay, now how do we choose what chord goes where? Now the first thing we might want to do is to select any of the chords. We do so by clicking on the black dot next to the chord. So we've now selected this green chord over here. So what we're now seeing in the middle are the settings for that specific chord. Now the first thing we might want to look at is major or minor chord. So we can choose between them, obviously. And then here we have 16 dots, and each of those dots represents a different variation. Now, you can see it's divided into 3 rows. So the rows to the left above the S, these are all subdominant chords. The dots above the D are dominant chords, and the dots above the T obviously are tonic chords. And then from low to high, the higher you get, the more complex they will be. So the chords at the bottom are relatively uncomplicated, but the higher you get, the more complex it will get. Okay, and then here we have inversion, so we can also invert these chords. So let me try that with a little less complex chord. Yeah, and then finally over here we have the velocity, which is kind of self-explanatory. Okay, now by clicking this little X up here, we are exiting the settings for any particular chord, and we are then thereby entering the global settings. So as you can see here, we also have some inversion settings, so global inversion, let me call it that. We can also set the length of the loop. Here we can set the speed, and then here we can change the key. Now once we're done editing in Chords, we can use this button down here to simply drag a MIDI file based on what we've done in Chords into our DAW, and of course then using the MIDI we can make some more detailed edits, and that's basically all there is to it. Okay, so in conclusion, so what do I think of Chords? Now, as they themselves at WA Production say, this is a plugin which is meant to inspire. So if you're low on inspiration, or you're just looking for some extra inspiration from somewhere, definitely an interesting one. Of course, obviously, it is not as sophisticated as something like Scalar, for example, where you can really dive into the chords and chords progression and etc., etc. So it's not that, but I have to say that if you're looking for some quick inspiration, you don't want it to be too complicated and you want it to be fast, this is definitely one to look into. Okay, so that's what I think of Chords. Go check it out for yourself. I will leave a link in the description. Thanks for watching, and I will talk to you next time.